Dean Curry here, Fantasy Football RSVP. We are talking about the first week of the playoffs. Let's get it rolling. Let's start off with the Colts and Texans. This is a very interesting setup because I think the Colts are really coming together at the right time, and I think that they are getting healthy at the right time. And that's really something that you have to look at when you watch these teams is who is actually getting healthy at the right time. And Andrew Luck really is looking like he's getting falling into his own and doing really well. And I understand the Texans, their defense comes and goes, very inconsistent. The team, has been pretty inconsistent. Sometimes the defense shows up, they play better in Houston, but this Colts team has already played them twice, and they should have beat them twice. And they're not scared of this team at all. And I really feel, Luck with Hilton getting healthy and Mack running well. And what people don't understand is, the Colts, they talk about, Clowney and Watt, and they have a good pass rush, and they have a good defensive line, the Texans. What a lot of people don't understand about the Colts, and I've been saying this for weeks, is the Colts have like the number one run defense. They haven't allowed many running backs to get even close to 100 yards. And not that the Texans have a great running game anyway, but Colts have somewhat of an underrated defense, I believe. And you really want to, definitely, look at them. And I just think at this time of year, you have to, and we always think outside the box at, my company, Fantasy Football RSVP. And we talk a lot about, the psychology of the game or game scripts and, how teams play or what coaches are thinking. And, we always break down being a personal trainer and working with athletes for so many years and working with so many injuries and rehabilitation, thousands and thousands of clients over 3 decades. I really love giving that player analysis on what a player could do when they're playing with an injury, what they can't do, and player capacity. We really start to break that down at my sports management conglomerate company, Rising Star Enterprises for Wellbeing. And, one of the things that, are going on as far as the psychology of these games and playoffs is, Luck has been there and he's taken some rough losses, in the playoffs, and he's healthy now. And some of those losses he took, he was actually injured. People say, oh, he didn't play well. He was injured in a lot of those playoff games, and he wasn't necessarily, when he lost, he wasn't necessarily the favored team either. Each time, for example, they went up against the Patriots, they were clearly the underdog. So you got to be careful when people start saying this player's not playing well in the playoffs. You got to look at all the intangibles that are involved. But the Texans are still, they have a young quarterback, a blossoming quarterback, but they're really inconsistent. They played well for a while. Even when they were winning games, they were winning games that were very close. The competition they were playing wasn't that good, and the Colts are playing some tough teams down the end of the season. They're playing really well. They're blossoming, and the psychology of the game is it really doesn't matter so much the regular season. It's who's playing well at the end of the season, and like the Eagles did last year, although the Eagles played pretty well the whole year, but they were really playing well at the end of the year. But we've seen teams like the Baltimore Ravens back in the day where teams just get hot. I'm from New York. The Giants did it with wild card teams where you just get hot at the right time and then you just ride it out. So we're going to talk a little bit about that because a lot of you are still playing in leagues, and I'm giving a lot of advice on leagues where you're basically, there's leagues where you're picking the teams and who are going to go to the finals, and the player that or a team that picks the most teams right with points is one type of league for the fantasy playoffs. Then there are leagues where you can only play one player once, throughout the entire playoffs, and the most points wins. That's a very interesting, and I'm going to give some talking and analysis with that. You know, the best thing is to figure out who's going to be there in the end, like which team, because if you pick, a player you could only play once and you're saving a player for the very end, you got to pick the right team that's going to be there. So these are very, very important, critical, type of videos that I'm making. And as well, we have, the Colts that just, again, playing well at the right time, and they're not scared about going into Houston. They've played there already, and, they're just not scared of this team. And I really think it's Andrew Luck's time for this week. Next week will be a whole nother call, which I'll go into. As far as the Chargers and Ravens are concerned, I really like when it comes down to playoffs. I talk a lot about defenses, and I talk a lot about defense wins championships and defense wins in the playoffs. And the reason why is the game slows down, and like many sports. So the game slows down, and the Ravens have a very good defense, no doubt, but so do the Chargers. And a lot of people haven't been paying that much attention to it, but the Chargers defense, since Bosa has come back, they started off the year not playing too well, but they have slowly started to play a lot better with Bosa coming in, and they're starting to click a little bit on defense. And not too many people are paying attention to that, and you got to pay attention to that because it's about playing at the right time. I mean, they have some banged up injuries with Allen with his hip. He's not 100%. Gordon doesn't quite look like himself. But they have other wide receivers, the Williams, players on, the Chargers, and Justin Jackson and Eckler, and they have other guys that could step up in that area. But the Chargers are the most balanced team. And I understand Lamar Jackson's playing well, but when you really think about the offense of the Ravens, outside of Lamar Jackson, I mean, who do the Ravens really have that is playing outstanding? Like who are their wide receiving core is playing outstanding? I mean, they have some talent there, but who's really playing? Who's really stepping up as far as running backs? Edwards. I mean, they it seems like they're every week picking a different running back to come in there and play, and sometimes the running's doing well and back. And the whole idea of a running quarterback, I think it's great. We've seen this before, though, and this is where the psychology of the game comes into play. We've seen it before with running quarterbacks. They come in and they do well for a while, and then all of a sudden it just stops. Whether it's RG3 or many of the running quarterbacks they've had in the leagues for quite some time, it just winds up never working out because the defenses adjust. And a lot of defenses are playing and game scripting for Flacco, and now Jackson's in there. It's like, oh, here we go again, a running quarterback. He's got a lot of talent. He throws it too a little bit, but the whole idea of him rushing for 2 touchdowns last week and rushing up the middle, a lot of that was catching, people by surprise. He's not going to be able to do that against the Chargers. Okay, their defensive lineup and what's going on in game scripting. The whole idea is if you stop Lamar Jackson from running the ball, you're going to probably beat the Ravens, because I mean, who do they really have that's really showcasing? I mean, they have talent, like I said, but as far as working, is it working for their offense? Who do they really have, on, their offense, running back, wide receivers? I mean, it's tough to even come up with all the names, whether it be Snead or, whomever. And even though, that, like I said, they have talent, it's like one week, one guy's, performing well and the rest aren't. And then there's running back who's running the ball. It's sort of like all over the place. So I really like the Chargers here. I think they're going to advance. As far as the West is concerned, we have the Cowboys and the Seahawks. I think it's a terrific matchup. It's probably going to be a really close game. I mean, Dallas is sort of playing well, other than a couple of strange show ups at the end of the season. They've slowly been coming around for most games in the second half of the season. Zeke Elliott, Amari Cooper, Dak. It seems like they're finding their way and have been for a number of weeks at the end of the season, and they're all playing better and blossoming. And a lot of people talk about the Cowboys defense and how incredible they are, and that they're this stout defense and they've been playing so well. And I think they're basing that on the fact of the first 3 quarters of the season, because the last quarter of the season, the Cowboys defense didn't play that well. Yeah, and I could probably say the last third of the season they didn't play that well. And I know a lot of people, are saying, how good they were, and they were good the first 2/3 of the season. But again, it's how you're playing, how you're gelling at the end of the season. A lot of things upset that with injuries, knick-knack injuries and chemistry and different things. But people have been moving the ball in the Cowboys defense. And the Seahawks, what a lot of people don't realize is I think you got to give a lot of credit to Carroll. He traded a lot of players in the offseason, or the organization did, and he got a lot of flack for it. And, they said that this is the demise of the Seahawks, and you would think the caliber of players that they had to let go and basically revamp their entire offense, and with injuries. I think it's time to really give Carroll his due credit. A lot of people do. Super Bowl champ should have had two. But the thing is, they also have a very decent defense. And, the first, 2/3 of the season, first third, it was not playing great, their defense. Second third, it started playing a little bit better. And in the last third of the season, and I'm not so much talking about giving up points, but what I'm talking about, because if you look at their points, oh, they're still giving up this amount of points, that amount of points. This is why you got to watch the games. I watched a lot of the Seahawks games, and you could see their defense, whether it be the defensive line, which was a weakness, stopping the run, or whatever the case may be. You could see their defense really starting to come together, whether it's going up against Mahomes or some of the other really good quarterbacks or good running backs. They were stopping running backs that were pretty unstoppable all year, and then they were stopping quarterbacks that were pretty unstoppable all year, or wide receivers at the right time. And that's what Seattle does is, they have weaknesses in the defense, but their coach is very good. And he's really good at coming up with game plans for that particular week. And even though, like I said, the Seahawks have been, if you look at the numbers they're giving up as far as points, it may look like they're giving up a lot of points, but each week, just like the Patriots, when they say, oh, Patriots have very bad defense, well, they've had a defense that hasn't been, performing well as a whole over the last number of years, but they're great at game scripting and taking the best player away, and that's what the Seahawks do. In the last third of the season, they were doing it better than just about anybody. And I know what they're going to do already. And we talk about the psychology of the game. And that's what we do here at Fantasy Football RSVP. We're not just giving you normal numbers or, analytics, and those things are great too, and all these like different things that, people come up with, home versus away, and, which player is, playing well against which team. I mean, all those stats, there's nothing wrong with them. They're great. But what we do here is we talk about things, or try to talk about things that no one's talking about that much, like game scripts, the psychology, of a player, being a motivational speaker and a life enhancement author, and dealing with human development. You start to get a real read on what's going on inside a player's head, what's going on inside an organization's head. Like the Steelers. I mean, I used to watch the Steelers when they played with Stallworth, Franco Harris, Lynn Swan, Mean Joe Green, and I really, used to love watching that team. And they've been known for having a good organization, but I've been telling people all year that there's team turmoil, and it wasn't a hidden secret, but I tried to explain all year how team turmoil, and when players are fighting with one another and or disagreeing, And I watch a lot of these players play, like Roethlisberger and AB and Le'Veon when he was playing, and they're an exciting team to watch, and they're exciting players to watch, and I'm definitely a fan. But you know, eh, when there's turmoil going on and lack of understanding, that affects an organization, whether it's on the playing field or a Fortune 500 company. Many of you have worked in jobs where the chemistry was not good, at the job you were working at, whether you were working in a corporation, in an office, or a restaurant, or whatever the case may be, and there was kind of like bad blood between people, and it affects the performance of its workers, definitely. And I've been saying all year, even when it looked like the Steelers were in a lock for their position, I was saying, you know what? This is going to come back to bite them. I wouldn't be surprised if they start to tank or lose or don't even make the playoffs. And that's what we talk about here. Those types of things, the psychology of the game and understanding human development. And that's what comes into play when you're playing in these leagues or tournaments for postseason play, fantasy football. You have to start thinking, and when you play the playoffs, there's a lot of pressure. And that's what I was talking about. The Texans, they haven't really been there yet. They're not ready yet. The Ravens with Lamar Jackson, I mean, certainly, it could go the other way in what I'm saying. And, oh, wow, the Ravens win or the Texans win. They're good football teams. But they're just not ready yet. Lamar Jackson, he's not ready yet, and you're going to see he's not going to be running for 50 yards or 40 yards on one play and 30 yards in scoring. That the game slows down in the defense, and you have to understand the psychology of the game, and there's pressure and all these things that come into play, and that's why the game slows down, because people try to be more careful in the playoffs because it's a one-game elimination. But back to the Cowboys and Seahawks, I really just love the way the Seahawks are playing right now. Their defense is really starting to play better in certain areas. They're great at game scripting. I mean, Carroll is a fantastic playoff coach, and Garrett, I think Garrett's underrated coach. A lot of people give him flack, for a lot of things that aren't his fault. I'm not saying, anything bad about him. He's definitely underrated, but against Carroll's a real playoff tested, player, and Russell and Baldwin is starting to come around and get healthy. And then you have Lockett, and, you have Carson, and all these running backs they have as backups, and they're just a well-balanced team, and they've been there before. And that, you got to think about things like that. Dak is coming into his own, but it was a new receiver who just came in, and different players, and I still think they need a few more weeks to get things together, and they don't have it. So I'm really liking the Seahawks here. And the Eagles and Bears. This is a very interesting game, and obviously I saved it for last because everyone's asking me on YouTube, on Twitter, on Instagram, on our Facebook pages, or website, Fantasy Football RSVP. Everybody's asking me about the Bears and are they going to the Super Bowl? And a lot of people are considering, them. They're certainly playing well at the end of the season. Very balanced team in some ways. Okay, and this is where the psychology comes into the game. When people say balanced team, are they really balanced? I mean, has Trubisky, played really well all year? Really playing well in their offense and, their defense and their, everything together with their wide receivers and running backs with Cohen and Howard. Well, their defense has been, consistent all year, playing well, and they're very good. But Trubisky really hasn't been that consistent. He's been a little all over the place. And there are games when you watch him and you say he's still growing. I mean, I think he's got a lot of potential. He's definitely a great player. But I don't think it's his time yet. He's still learning, and you see that. And this is why you have to watch the games, because at the end of the day, his stats may look good, but if you watch the games, there are just plays where you sit there and say, well, he's not quite there yet. He's growing. He's going to get there. He's going to be a star one day. But in the playoffs, it's a little harder. There's a little bit more pressure, and you have to think of those things. And their wide receiver core has been banged up all year. It's been incredibly inconsistent and unhealthy. And they're still trying to figure out, is it going to be Burton? Is it going to be Robinson? Who are they going to throw the ball? Are they going to use Cohen and they're going to use Howard? And I know Nagy, he likes to spread things around and all over the place, but that team is still figuring things out. And the pressure of the playoffs, sure, their defense is going to play well, but has anyone been watching the Eagles? Play. And almost all the comments I'm getting are like, do you like the Bears? Do you like the Bears? Do you like the Bears? No, I like the Eagles, with Nick Foles. And I said this for weeks and weeks and weeks. And, the Eagles defense, is not what they were last year. But, what's funny is when, they're not on the field as much and the Eagles are clicking a little bit more on offense and they're not as tired on defense. Whether they're playing the Rams or whatever the case may be, I mean, they were handling the Rams in their offense. And, I really like the Eagles because what Foles does is he spreads the ball more down the field. And what I think Wentz does is he's more of a game manager, and he uses a lot of the inside routes, and he could throw it pretty long too. But when you watch Foles, I mean, he is just a really great accurate and risk taker at the right times at throwing the ball long and down the field. I mean, that's really his specialty, and that's really what the Eagles need, and that's why their offense just gets jump started. Because see, what happens is, when he could stretch the field like that, throwing the ball down the field, it just opens up the Sproles, the Ertz plays, all those plays over the middle, and their running game wasn't doing much, but all of a sudden their running game's alive because they're not stacking against the box. And this is the psychology of things you have to think about, and that's what we do here at Fantasy Football RSVP, is we think outside the box and we see the game scripts and the psychology of their offense. And what Foles is in there, I mean, it just looks like their offense is coming alive just like they did last year. And although their defense hasn't put up, numbers or statistical numbers where you say, oh, their defense is playing well. If you've been watching the last number of games since Foles has been in there, their defense, it may not show up in the stats. This is why you got to watch the games. But they're making plays at the right times, and they did it against the Rams. And I not only like, the Eagles this week against the Bears, I think they have a really good shot the following week when they play the Rams. And I would probably say the same thing. I think the Colts are going to win, and the Chargers are going to win. And, I think, I think that's the same too. And then you're going to have, other games going on that go down the pipe when the Chargers play the Chiefs. And that's going to be a really tough game. Really, really tough game. My prediction, I think the Chiefs are going to win. Just too much firepower. And now Damian Williams is really coming into his own. They're suspect on defense, but a lot of people don't realize their defense has been a little banged up all year and getting a little healthier. And no one really has a fantastic defense except the Ravens, who I think are going to be beat by the Chargers. So they'll be out. And the Texans, a little bit. They're going to get, knocked out as well, in my opinion. And so I think the Chiefs are going to play the Patriots in the AFC Championship. And I think that the Chiefs are going to win. I really do. And it's hard to bet against Brady in any, capacity. And I certainly don't like to put my, thoughts or backing behind a rookie quarterback. But he's not a rookie. A lot of people don't understand that. He's a second-year player. And he went through 2 training camps, and it's a little different. If he was a rookie, I'd probably go with the Patriots. And they're playing in Arrowhead. They're playing in Kansas City. And that's a tough place to play. And they already played the Patriots. And the Patriots are not playing their best football right now. And either are the Chiefs. But some of that was with Damian Williams coming in. And I just think they have too much firepower with Hill and Kelsey. So I think that the I do believe that the Kansas City Chiefs are going to be in the Super Bowl. I really do. As far as the West is concerned, going back to the Eagles, I think the Eagles are going to win. I just think they have too much firepower on offense, and I just don't think it's the Bears' time. And certainly they have a good defense, but this is the playoffs, and in the playoffs you got to throw the ball, and you got to throw the ball down the field. And no one's doing it better than Foles right now. And that team is just clicking at the right time. And this is what we talk about. I do think the Eagles are going to play the Rams. And I think the Eagles are going to beat the Rams. And the reason why I say that is the Rams are not playing their best football the last third of the season. And the Eagles played the Rams week 15, and they beat them. I mean, they were up 30 to like 13. I think it wound up being like 30 to 23. But they, and this was in Los Angeles Rams Stadium, and the Eagles just really beat them. And I think they're going to beat them again, and they're going to meet the Saints in the NFC Championship. And that's when I think it's going to run out for the luck, not the luck, the good fortunes for the Eagles, because although they're playing really well, defense wins championships. And the last third of the season, the Saints defense has been playing really well. And it's very underrated defense. And they have the most balanced team. And I just think it's Drew Brees' time. And I think that Drew Brees is going to go to the Super Bowl, and they're going to play the Chiefs. It's going to be a wonderful match. And I think the Saints are going to win. And the reason why is defense wins championships, and the Saints defense is much better than Kansas City's defense. And I think the Super Bowl, by that point, I do think, Mahomes may not quite be there yet, although the guy's pretty amazing. And I do think that defense is going to win that game. And I like the way that the Saints defense has been playing, and I think the Saints are going to be the Super Bowl champions. So there you go. I will be updating this video as we go. I will be updating it each week. And, some of these predictions I'm going to get may not be right. And if not, I'll take it on the chin. I'm going to always be right more than I'm wrong. And we'll adjust it, and then I'll tell you who I think, will do well from there, and game scripts, because then at that point I have to adjust and then look at the matchups, and then, restart my thinking on it, and who's going to win, and what's a better matchup, or who's playing well. And in fantasy football, that's a week-to-week thing. So I could say something one week and then see something and then change my mind and go with a different direction. And that's why fantasy football is so great, is each week you have to make adjustments. It's never about, oh, you said this and you weren't right about that. You're never gonna be right all the time. Michael Jordan, missed a whole bunch of shots. He's the greatest player ever in basketball, in my opinion. It's debatable. But I really, try to, think things through, and I'm always gonna be on point most of the time. And I really think it's going to be the Chiefs and the Saints, and I think the Saints are going to win the Super Bowl. This is Dean Curry. Certainly, I'm going to be updating this website at least a couple of shows a week in the off season. We have the Allegiance of American Football coming up in 2019, and we're going to be talking about that. And of course, that's the 1 week after the Super Bowl, and then the following year we have the reboot of the XFL. So we're going to have football all year round. It's going to be great. And, we have our YouTube, Instagram, Twitter accounts. I'm going to be putting information on that, our Facebook page, all of them under Fantasy Football RSVP. I think the Twitter account is FFootball RSVP. Just follow it. It's really about building a community, a brotherhood. That's what fantasy football is all about. I mean, yeah, we play in leagues and we like to win. And, I posted, some of our winners on our wall of fame on our website. Some of the winners that we helped are actually on our wall of fame website. And you have a chance to do that as well, being a part of our fantasy football Knights and Dames Club. You pay $7.77 a month. It's a couple dollars a week, and you get fantasy football advice, lineup advice. You get to speak to me directly on Skype. You get to be part of our brotherhood and sisterhood, Knights and Dames fantasy football RSVP Knights and Dames. It's a great community, and we have group chats in the Facebook, and it's just about a brotherhood and a sisterhood and being part of something that even goes beyond football and sports lovers, and it's a great thing. So I'll be back next week with some more after the playoffs. This is Dean Curry, president and founder of Fantasy Football RSVP, and have a wonderful week.